It is our tradition now as a congregation to spend a few moments in silent meditation listening to the sound of Kol Nidre played on the cello. I'll ask now Aaron Merritt, young man who grew up in our community, who now comes back to play for us, and for other synagogues to come forward and to present this beautiful sound as we think of our lives and we think of forgiveness. In Jewish tradition, when someone asks you how old you are, and you share that information, the response is supposed to be, may you live to be 120. Ad 120, or in Yiddish, bis 120. But classically, one never wishes someone even one day over 120. Rabbi Joel actually used to say that with inflation he should get a few more years, but the tradition is only 120, not one day more. That's the day Moses traditionally died, on his 120th birthday. So there's a story told of a new rabbi who went to a congregation mainly of elderly people, and he met a congregant and he asked, how old are you? And the congregant said, 80. He said, may you have 40 more years of health. So he met another, an older gentleman, Mr. Schwartz. He was 100 years old. May you have 20 more years of good life and health. And then he met the oldest member of his congregation. And she said to him, I'm 120 years old tomorrow. He said, have a nice day. You know, the latest science tells us that more and more of us are going to live to be 3 digits of some form or another. Maybe we have to adjust now and look back into the Bible. Methuselah, after all, lived 969 years. That seems a little far-fetched, but according to our tradition, Abraham lived 175 years, so maybe we'll use that as a standard in the future. Why not? After all, if that's what's happening, in 1900, in America, the average lifespan was about 47 years, and now we're approaching 80. So, in fact, if you want to read a nice article, a real interesting one, the New Atlantic Monthly has a great article about this, about longevity. Change is inevitable. You know, I know many of you have said over and over to me in many contexts, I hate change. You said it to me over and over. I want things, you say, to stay the same. And I know that change is hard for many people. However, change is the rule, not the exception. Nothing remains the same, ever. Our experience tells us that, and research tells us that. People are constantly changing in our lives. There was an incident, we just observed the 13th commemoration of 9/11, and there was one of the stories, many stories, but this was Marissa Paragoso, who was on the 98th floor of the South Tower when the North Tower was hit. And the alarms went off. And this lady, Marissa, didn't shut off her computer, didn't grab her purse. She just went to the stairs and exited as fast as she could. Now, Marissa was talking to 2 coworkers at the time the first plane hit. Those 2 coworkers did not follow her. They stayed in the building. Someone, a friend of hers, did start down with her, but decided to go back up for baby pictures. No one, except Marissa in that office, survived. Now, research has shown, and the psychoanalyst Dr. Paul Gross wrote a book about it, that we don't respond quickly to alarms. In fact, fire alarms rarely get us moving. We talk about it, we think about it, we wait, we're stuck, we don't know if it's a real fire alarm or a false fire alarm, we hesitate. We want to remain in the world we know and not the unknown world. Change often means loss, and loss hurts. At the least, loss is unsettling for all of us. But 2,500 years ago, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus made this observation: the only thing that is constant is change. 2,500 years ago. This challenges the ideas that some things stay the same. We may not see the change, some change is slow, but everything changes. On the level of atoms, constant motion, constant change. In quantum physics, we know that all is energy, and that energy is constantly in motion. either in particle or in wave motion, constantly moving. We may seem solid, but everything we see is changing and moving all the time. Culture. You know that culture changes. Have you ever tried to share your favorite movie with your child or your grandchild? Come to one of our bar and bat mitzvahs. There was a bat mitzvah here not long ago that loved dance, and I was trying to relate to her. So I said, you know, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Gene Kelly. And there was this blank stare like, on what planet do you live, old man? No idea who these people were. Because culture is changing. The world is constantly changing. This year, Philip Roth, you remember Philip Roth, right? You've read Philip Roth. Philip Roth was called a self-hating Jew when he wrote Goodbye Columbus and Portnoy's Complaint. This year, he was given an honorary doctorate at the Jewish Theological Seminary, the seat of conservative Judaism in the world. Everything changes. Even Orthodox Judaism changes. You and I don't always see it, but let me share 2 observations about it. There was a well-known Hasidic rabbi who lived about 50 years ago, the Hasidic rabbi of Pruzaka. This is what he observed. First, there were prophets, but God looked and saw that the situation was deteriorating and that the prophets were no longer what they used to be. Then prophecy ceased, and the prophets were replaced by the Mishnaic and Talmudic sages. After some time, too, they began to go downhill. So God brought on the Geonim, and after a while, that reality began to worsen. The Geonim were followed by the great rabbis, which deteriorated as well. So God brought the Hasidic Rebbes. And now I see that this too is about to deteriorate. And I don't know what will come after that. Here was a Hasidic Rebbe saying about himself that his own tradition has been changing and it is still changing, and that new leaders will arise and he doesn't know what they will look like. There was a beautiful article written this year by an Orthodox man about a thing called social orthodoxy. Social orthodoxy. These, you may know some of these. I do. These are people who belong to an Orthodox shul, who live an Orthodox life. They keep kosher, Shabbat, Yom Tov, all of the halachot, but they don't believe in God. They don't believe in God. They don't believe that God commanded these things. They do it for social reasons. They do it because they enjoy it. They like the people that are there. They like the rabbi. They like the chazan. That's why they're there. They're social orthodox. Times change among all of us, everywhere. We expect it from a Reform congregation, but even that has been changing. One of the major themes, obviously, of this holiday is teshuvah. Repentance means change, turning directions, reorienting ourselves, recalculating, as it says in that little JPS that we have that drives us crazy. Changing direction is at the core of what we do. The Hebrew word for year, shana, as its core can mean change, to change. Jewish thought tells us that the world is in constant motion and everything is changing. We pray this prayer, God renew the kindness every day, constantly the process of creation. The world is always becoming, it never just is. We are always becoming. We're becoming ourselves. We're changing in stages. It happens slowly, so we don't often notice it until we look in the mirror one day and say, is that really me? Do I have those wrinkles? Where did that gray hair come from? And then we sort of recognize that change has taken place. Roger Rosenblatt wrote a lovely article about it, about himself. He said, I am the spitting image of myself. How like myself I am. This is why I do not believe in time. How could I, if I feel the presence of the boy as completely as I do the man? In many ways, more completely, since the boy is more completely realized. He who existed in me half a century ago walks with me today. We're all that boy or that girl. We all are that child from years ago that's still in us, but we are no longer exactly that child. Some of us would rather not change. Some of us try not to. Some of us ignore change as it happens. Some of us fight it, but nobody gets a pass. Everybody is on this journey together. Our tradition says we should celebrate that change. We celebrate the fact that Moses handed over leadership to a very different leader, Joshua. You know, the first temple and the second temple were radically different. In the Holy of Holies in the second temple, it was empty. There was no Ark of the Covenant. Empty. And yet they continued to look in there and to pray in there, even though the core item was not there any longer. And we haven't had a temple for 2,000 years, but we continue to come back. We continue to pray, even without the temple. Change is the core of our tradition. Abraham and Sarah journeyed without knowing where they were going. So do you and I. Moses and the Israelites knew they were going eventually to the promised land, but weren't clear as to what that was and how long they would be there. That's true for you and for me. The Talmudic rabbis, Akiba and Rav and Beruria, all of them, they didn't know where they would end up, what they would do, and yet they understood that they would celebrate each blessing along the way. And here in Miami Beach, we in this congregation, you know, when we began in 1942, during World War II, with 10 families, that Temple Beth Shalom is not the same as this Temple Beth Shalom. In those days, we fought here anti-Semitism openly in these streets, and we fought for religious freedom here and in Washington. Some things don't change. We wrestled over the years with debt, with dilapidated buildings, with a weak infrastructure. We've seen ourselves become a young, dynamic, thriving, but vibrant community again. 72 years. We can see the change. It's obvious to those who've read the history or lived the history. We are not living the Reformed Judaism of Rabbi Kronish and the founders. The music of this community is not the music of Cantor Kellemer or Cantor Convaser. Everything has changed. Life is about change. And sometimes you and I get caught by surprise, and then we suddenly realize change has come. I remember reading about a man, a prosperous man, who had a brand new car, and he was driving through a fairly poor, sketchy part of town, and there was a boy there waving to try and get his attention. And he, like most of us, looked aside and ignored the boy, but he got caught at the red light. And so there he was at the red light, and suddenly he heard this thud on his car. And he realized that the boy had thrown a brick at his car. So he got out of the car and said, "You're going to pay for this, or you're going to go to jail." And the boy said, "Please, I'm sorry, but my mother is lying in our apartment and I have no way to help her. Can you please call for an ambulance, something, a doctor, to help her? I'll go to jail, but help my mother." He said, "I'm a doctor." And he went with the boy, did CPR, called the ambulance. And the boy asked him, "Will my mother live?" The doctor said, "Yes, your mother will live." And the boy said, "Then it was worth it. I'll go to jail if I have to." And the man said, "You're not going to jail. It was my fault that I didn't pay attention to you. I needed that brick to remind me of what's important in the world." Sometimes we need a brick. Sometimes we get a brick whether we need it or not. It's part of life. Bricks happen to us. Taps on the shoulder by God, sometimes smashes into our lives happen. But change is inevitable. Tonight, we commemorate a milestone in Temple Beth Shalom's history. Cantor Stephen Haas asked us and the board not to have a dinner in his honor since he wasn't leaving the congregation, so we conveniently chose Kol Nidre. There will be no dinner tonight for Cantor Haas. Some of you have known Cantor Haas since his childhood. Some of you know him only by his voice. But I want to share with you something of his life because it's a testament to what it is to embrace change and to celebrate possibilities and to affirm perseverance, resilience, and making the most out of bricks. He was born in New York but came here as a toddler. He grew up in the Miami Beach of the 50s and 60s, which was a small little Jewish town. Some of you remember it. He was at Temple Beth Shalom as a young boy, and he caught the eye of Cantor Conviser, David Conviser, became his mentor, saw in him musical talent that might serve the Jewish people. And then everything changed one day. Stephen's parents were on their way home. They were on Alton Road, not far from here at the 51st Street Bridge, when a young man who had stolen a car plowed into their car, driving them into the water and killing both of them. Suddenly, Stephen and his sister were orphans, not long after his bar mitzvah. The grandparents and the family did what they could and supported them and helped raise them, but somehow out of that unimaginable tragedy of losing both your parents, Stephen learned to be positive about life. And he focused on his music, and he focused on making something of himself. He went to conservatory and festivals, and eventually there he met a beautiful red-headed young musician. She's sitting out there, Nina. And he thought he would pursue becoming a cantor. And he was actually enrolled at the Hebrew Union College School for Sacred Music. And then a different kind of brick came, an offer to sing in the Israeli opera. And he had to make a choice, and they made a choice. He went to Israel. He and Nina traveled there and started a career of over 12 years, which went to Germany and Stuttgart, where he sang as tenor in the company there, and all over Europe, and in fact many places in the world. His life had changed. And at a certain point, he and Nina decided that they wanted to have children, and an opera singer's life is very nomadic. It was not a good way to raise children, so again, they made a decision. He decided to come back and pursue his cantorial studies, and he took a position in a congregation in North Carolina. About that time, Cantor Conviser was retiring here, and eventually, Cantor Haas came home to his home congregation here, where he was bar mitzvah on this bima, where his family had their tragedies and celebrated their love. His life instructs us that choice is not only an important part of life, it's our way of taking some control and accepting our fate. He did. He could have been a bitter, twisted human being. He could have given up on life. He could have said, if this is what God has in store for me, forget God, forget Judaism, forget this. But he chose to build community and family, and he chose to make something of his life. And for that, we are the beneficiaries. His career exhibits what I'm speaking about. Change is inevitable, sometimes wonderful and sometimes horrific. But whether it is beautiful or sad or painful, it is ours to live with, and it is ours to celebrate and to make something of. And we each can do that through his determination to create family. He has affirmed the life through hard work, through willingness to learn, and a desire to grow. He's always demonstrated loyalty to his family, loyalty to this congregation, loyalty to Israel. And he's always been grateful for the blessings in life. We need to learn for our lives, to look at our lives and see how we can apply this, because we are changing. Our lives are changing. For our congregation, Cantor Haas has been our praying voice, powerful, moving, pure, expressing music that raises goosebumps and tears. And he's our shepherd who has brought us to Israel. Hundreds of families, how many of us here have been in Israel with Cantor Haas and learned to love the state of Israel through him? And he's been our Purim spiel, but not just at Purim. He's given us joy and happiness, and he's been our comfort in times of pain and loss. For me, personally, he's my Beryl Katznelson. You'll have to ask him what that means. My right hand, who always has a chair right there behind me when I'm ready to sit down or when I'm about to fall. Maybe he's my Dr. Watson. I'm not sure. But he has been my partner in everything here and in Israel all these 25 years. At times, he's been my pain in the neck. But he's always a willing and enthusiastic friend and colleague. Why the title Emeritus? Emeritus is one who has earned, deserved, merited honor, has been elevated to a position that few attain. This is a goal achievable through distinction and longevity, a title reflecting a high level of excellence. Cantor Stephen Haas, Cantor Emeritus Stephen Haas, has taken another step on his journey. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? He will remain, with God's help, comforting voice of prayer and music for our congregation, a support for our new cantor, Cantor Lisa Siegel, an honored member of our clergy and staff and our community, and a valued friend to so many congregants. Yom Kippur is a time of change, time to embrace change. May we each look at our own journey, at our own choices, at our own values, and spend this day deciding to embrace them, deciding to rejoice in our changes, deciding to affirm life. May we celebrate the new, the different, the ongoing. May we not need a brick to hit us before we recognize all that we are becoming and the beauty of it. May we celebrate the blessings in our lives and accept those changes as ongoing and inexorable. And in the words of the Serenity Prayer, may God grant us all the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Gemar Chatima Tova. May we all be blessed for good this year. We want to take a few moments now to formally honor Cantor Haas in his role as emeritus. I would like to call forward some of the commissioners of Miami Beach, who I understand have a presentation to make to Cantor Haas. I'll ask Cantor Haas to join them up here, that he might receive that presentation.
I'm going to take a little personal privilege. My family have been members of Temple Beth Sholem for more than 60 years, so I get to speak. I'd like to first introduce, I'm Joy Malakoff. This is Commissioner Dee Dee Whitehorn, Commissioner Mickey Steinberg, Commissioner Ed Tobin, and we are all members and proud members of Temple Beth Sholem. Cantor Haas. Cantor Haas, I thank you personally for making our wedding 18 years ago memorable. Cantor Haas not only sang the liturgy, but opera. On behalf of the mayor and commissioners of the city of Miami Beach, we have this proclamation for you. Whereas Cantor Stephen Haas has served as the cantor of Temple Beth Sholem for 25 years with honor and distinction after a storied career as an opera star on stages in Europe, Israel, and around the world. And whereas Cantor Haas has inspired thousands with his exquisite music, his spirited prayers, and his deep spirituality. And whereas Cantor Haas has taught generations of students Torah, Hebrew, prayer, and Jewish living. And whereas Cantor Haas has led hundreds of families on pilgrimages to Israel and inculcated in them his love and commitment to the Jewish state. And whereas Cantor Haas has publicly represented the Jewish community and Temple Beth Sholem in rallies, public gatherings, commemorations, and events with dignity. And whereas Cantor Haas has been a cultural gift to Miami Beach, Miami-Dade County, and Florida, performing music that touched the souls and hearts of all ages. And whereas Cantor Haas has earned the title of Cantor Emeritus of Temple Beth Sholem, in recognition of his devotion and passionate service. Now, therefore, do we, as mayor and commissioners of the city of Miami Beach, hereby proclaim October 3rd, 2014 as Cantor Stephen Haas Day. Congratulations. Thank you for everything.
So we thought about what it was that we wanted to give you that would commemorate this day. And so we created something. First of all, something that reflects your love of Israel and your love of Temple Beth Sholem. So, this is a Chanukiah reflecting the city of Jerusalem called the Gates of Jerusalem, made by Frank Meisler, a great artist in Jaffa. It actually lifts off. You could actually mount it on your wall if you want, but we like it here. And particularly Rabbi Davis and his buddy Stormy created something very special to mount it. The wood that is in this mount, Cantor, was the wood you stood on for your bar mitzvah. It was the wood that was taken out of these stairs and this bima when we redid the bima over 3 years ago. And they've kept some of that wood, and this is the actual wood that you stood on when you were 13. And in between is a piece of the Jerusalem stone that we've used for our chapel, for this sanctuary, and for creating this new environment that you've been part of. So it reflects not only Israel, but your past and your future, as well as your present. And so it reads, very simply, these words: Jerusalem Chanukiah presented to Cantor Stephen Haas on the occasion of the commemoration of his becoming Cantor Emeritus of Temple Beth Sholem, 10th of Tishrei 5775, October 3rd, 2014, hereafter known as Cantor Stephen Haas Day. May you continue to grow and glow from strength to strength. Mazel tov.
I am overwhelmed. So in the words of Rabbi Glickstein, please be seated. Before I begin my very brief remarks, I have nothing to say, but I was so filled with emotion with the beautiful words the rabbi spoke about me. It seems that all these years have gone by very quickly, and you've helped make it go by very quickly. But I think the greatest thing he said was that he compared me with Beryl Katznelson. For those of you who don't know, Beryl Katznelson was David Ben-Gurion's right-hand man. He made it all happen. Ben-Gurion was in the spotlight. But that's the way we like it. That's the way we like it. But the comparison ends there because Beryl Katznelson lived his life not only in the same apartment with his wife, but with his mistress also. And 25 years ago, I was asked to leave the room so the Temple Beth Shalom Search Committee could discuss the possibility of my becoming the next cantor of this great synagogue. I walked along the then entrance to the sanctuary and stood on the sidewalk, staring across at North Beach Elementary, my old school. The building had not changed very much. I then turned and gazed at Temple Beth Shalom. I did not see the building. I only saw all of you. Some of you were not physically here at the time, and some of you are not physically here now. But you were all there at that moment and have been so ever since. Our building has gone through many changes, but you have not changed one bit. You have continued to be a warm, caring, fun-loving, cultured, and socially conscious community. You are Hamish, and we have a close relationship. I was asked by a young father who was holding the hand of his 3-year-old daughter, "Cantor, how many bar mitzvahs have you done?" I looked at him and I responded, "Only one, yours. Only one wedding, yours. Only one baby naming, that of your daughter. Only one funeral, your grandfather's. I have only taken one trip to Israel, and that was with you, echad, one, be'echad, as one, together. But how you have enriched my life and the life of my family. We have had the blessing of being here together with you at every important moment of our lives, both happy and sad. I won't attempt to name all of my colleagues, staff, and friends for fear that I would leave someone out. But there is someone who deserves more than just a mention. Nina, I'd like you to come up here. Very rarely does she do what I ask her to do. Without hesitation, this is really Cantor Stephen Haas Day. I'm not going to pay for this because you're going to make sure that I don't. Nina, you have asked me daily for nearly 40 years, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But you have never even once asked me, why are you going back to the temple? Never. Thank you, Nina, for all that you have given and continue to give to me and our children. When I performed my first wedding with Rabbi Glickstein, he asked me to stand on his left side. As he put it, I sleep on this side. You gotta love him. I would like to ask Joni Glickstein, the regular occupant of the left side to please come up and join us on the bimah. This is the picture that has been taken many times over the past 25 years, here at temple events, in our homes, and so many times all over Israel. Two of us have been photographed in various stages of physical girth and receding hairlines, while the other two continue to grow more beautiful as the years go by. I thank you for this great honor and ask myself the question that Tevye and Golda asked of each other in Fiddler on the Roof. Do I love you? I suppose I do.
And I suppose we love you too.
It doesn't change a thing, but even so, after 25 years, it's nice to know. Thank you so much. Adon Olam Asher Malach, B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra, V'ein Basar V'chetzar Kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nivra, Ve'acharei Kifot HaKol, Levado Yimloch Nahara, Ve'hu Hayom, Ve'hu Hoveh, Ve'hu Yiyeh, Netiv Hara, Ve'hu Echad, Ve'ein Sheni, Lehamshilo, Lechavira, Ve'li Reshit, Ve'li Tachlit, Ve'lo Ha'oz, Ve'hamizrach, Ve'hu Leili, Ve'chai Go'ali, Ve'tzur Chevli, Ve'ein Sahara, Ve'hu Nisi, U'manosi, Ve'nat Kosi, Ve'yom E'ra, Ve'yado, Hatiruti, Ve'en Tishon, Ve'alira, Ve'imruchi, Ve'viati, Adonai li, Ve'lo li.
Shabbat Shalom, Gemar Chatima Tova. See you tomorrow.